Welcome to another segment of Politics Done Right. I'm here with Dr. Alauna. Dr. Alauna, did I say that correctly?
You said it with the Spanish version of it, but yeah, Dr. Alauna.
Dr. Alauna. Well, excuse my intonation, my accent, or whatever. But anyway, she specializes in diagnosis and treatment of complex psychological trauma and related mental health conditions. She's done a whole lot of work with veterans. You know how these veterans came back into town? Well, she straightened quite a few of them out. Dr. Alauna, how are you doing today?
That's a good question. How am I doing today? That's actually a more serious question than most people realize.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I can only go, how am I doing? But I'm not doing okay.
Okay. Tell me.
I cried real tears this morning trying to figure out how to juggle my kids' education and some of the expectations that the school is requesting, and also running my businesses and, helping take care of people and all of those things. So yeah, no, I'm not okay. I'm sure there's probably a lot of other people who are not okay too.
Right. Well, one of the reasons I had you on is, I go through my feed on Facebook and I go to different sites to see what I'm covering for the day, for the week, etc. And you made mention about people being at home and the coronavirus. I don't remember exactly what you were saying, but since I'd heard you before, I said, you know what? The best person to have on right now, given that people are going through hell at home, just like you were talking about your own kids, they're going through hell at home with the solitude, they're going through hell with the depression. Tell me, when you see numbers like this, Alauna, when you see numbers like this, that is scary. So people are home because they're running from numbers like this. Yeah. How should people cope?
You will have You can have moments where you will feel very sad, very upset, very distraught. There are lots of people, you put those numbers up there. People have had people that have died, and they are not able to be with their family members sometimes in their last moments, and can't even be with them even in the funeralizing or memorializing process. So it is 100% okay to have controlled releases of those emotions, or when you're feeling tense up or in a lot of pain, to acknowledge that and say to yourself, it's okay for me to feel this way because I'm a functional, normal brain human being. I think just acknowledgement of those things can help them pass, and you just allow it to come in. And then you allow it to leave. Emotions don't last forever, but a lot of times because we don't know how to deal with them very well, when they hit, we're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going to die. Like literally your emotions can make you feel like you are going to drop dead. Like that's how intense it can be for people who have panic attacks or people who have depression, and there were people struggling before. So now you have even more people who are in that space. So that's, one, just being kind to yourself about the fact that you're having the emotions. And two, taking breaks, like give yourself time to go outside, take a walk, do meditation, doing things that make you feel better. Take a hot bath, soak in the tub, do little things for yourself, because honestly what happens is that most of us don't have good coping skills, or at least healthy coping skills. We drink, we smoke, we, maybe have sex, we watch TV, we, avoid. A lot of us like to do a lot of things that help us avoid those emotions. But that can be catastrophic, right? Because if I'm get in this space where now I don't have, now I'm quarantined, I may not have access to my previous coping mechanisms, or maybe I'm overusing the things that previously might have just been helpful. Like sometimes maybe we were binge eating. Now I hear so many people binge eating because of the stress. So really getting in touch with your body and like asking yourself questions like, am I hungry or am I eating because I'm stressed and I need something to do, or I want that sugar rush or that, whatever kind of rush I'm looking for that will help distract me from how I'm feeling.
So now you mentioned something, and I think that happens to all of us, right? Okay, I'm sitting down here, I'm in whatever conditions, so I just run ahead and go get me some nuts, or I go get me a piece of cake, or I go get, how do you tell yourself not to do that?
Well, I think this is the reason why I teach about these primitive brain systems that drive a lot of our behaviors, because your brain reward system, for example, is your addiction system, your dopamine system. And so everybody has one, and everybody's dopamine system is hopping right now, right? So, when I'm, 12 o'clock at night, just finished binging my Netflix, and, going to then I'm like, what can I do?
Something, right? Absolutely.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden I'm standing in front of the refrigerator. That's my dopamine system driving my behavior. And that, the urge to act or do something, it's like I could reach to the left and I could, open the freezer and pull out that ice cream, or I could reach to the right and open that refrigerator and pull out those carrots.
Right.
But,
the carrots. The ice cream kind of tastes better than the carrots now.
But I mean, there's fruit, thankfully food supply is still doing okay. We need to pay attention to the fact that our food supply is being threatened by the lack of health care and lack of attention to the people who work to keep our food supplies. But, beyond that, it's really about being able to put your body in neutral, just like a car. You can get in there, car's running, but, you have to think about, where am I going? Where do I want to go? Do I want to go to the version of this where, in 3 months from now, I'm 50 pounds heavier? Or do I want to go to the version of this that, I may be gaining a few pounds because I'm being reasonable with myself, but sometimes I do just make myself grab those carrots. And so it's really about wrestling yourself into a moderation that you can live with, because at the end of the day, you have to live the consequences. That's what I mean that's why I call us creators.
Right.
And why we're not taught how to have that awareness of how the animal part of us can really take you places, and you don't even realize that that's where you're headed until you get there.
Right. Right. Now, let me ask you something. This sort of on the subject as well. Is what we're going through right now, can it be conducive to sort of a PTSD as well, or are they different mechanisms?
It's the same mechanism. There will be people who have PTSD. There are people who have PTSD right now from this.
Because of this.
Because of this. And also consider that we're dealing with the enemy. When I say enemy, I won't even call it an enemy, but we're dealing with a force that is invisible.
Right.
And so that will, when it's time to, quote, get back out there, what people are not accounting for is the trauma that is being induced by having an invisible entity that is causing harm, right? So people are not just going to we know people are mixing and mingling now because they think that they are somehow not subject to the rules of this virus. But in a couple of weeks, they're going to be learning that very, directly within their own communities.
Are you still seeing a lot of, because like where I'm at, people, it's almost desolate. Are you still seeing a lot of people acting as if it's nothing?
Not in my vicinity. I'm not seeing anything because I'm in my house.
You're home.
I'm like, yep, do what you do. Okay. But as far as, yes, there are still a lot of people who are just waking up to the reality that this is a real thing and that it's not a hoax, and that it is actually that is a very potentially deadly and devastating illness. So there are some people who are still not there yet, that are just operating in their little bubble. And, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So that creates a lot of confusion. And, we know that the African American communities are being hit particularly hard.
That. I wanted, and actually I have a specific question about that. We continuously seem to be at the brunt of these diseases affecting us more than anyone else. And it's not genetic, is it? It's mostly socioeconomic.
Yes. It's mostly socioeconomic. It is the byproduct of years of stress and trauma and neglect and intentional systematic targeting of our communities that piles up into physical manifestation, so just sort of taking a little piece, like we were given the scraps of the animals. So we made those animals taste amazing. Throw all kinds of butter and salt and sugar and whatever you can on there. You cook all your vegetables in the animal meat and what have you.
You want to be talking about chitlins now.
I mean, not necessarily chitlins, but I'm just thinking about in general, like the historic way that we have learned to cook and make soul food and the staples of some of our diet. And so then you fast forward that into, now you have taste buds that have been programmed for generations to eat in a certain way or to appreciate food in a certain way. And you have recipes and you have...
I see. Right. You're saying that there's a historical reason why the bad eating, there's an historical reason. It's not really, if your culture is accustomed to eating all these greens and so forth, great. But slaves only could eat these leftovers. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm just using that as a small example of how we have not addressed core factors that play a role in why we manifest certain conditions, and so when you have systematic redlining so that the communities are clustered and you keep them less, like African Americans are more likely to be in service roles, like the grocery store clerk.
More exposure to the corona.
Exactly. So you have more exposure. We're more likely to be the garbage and waste carriers who are transmitting all of this extra, potentially contaminated, waste from people's homes. So there's, we're more likely to be in janitorial services where we're doing the cleaning. So, it's very easy to say that, they're just not healthy or they're just not healthy. And but without looking at, exactly. And that's their fault. But that also disregards 400 years of history that says that we have a huge systematic inequality that is continuously feeding into the factors that make us manifest these health conditions. Stress in itself. Now it's like people are starting to actually realize how stressful it can be, even just to be home with your kids, right?
You don't sound. I didn't mean this portion to be political at all, but I'm going to tell you a little story that I've started telling for a long time. And I know you know Appalachia. I always equate Appalachia and the ghettos, right? Mm-hmm. And what I show is that if you take a look at the socioeconomic conditions in Appalachia and you take the socioeconomic conditions in the ghetto, what you find is the same behaviors. You find all these things that are equal: stress levels, blood pressure, all these kinds of things, which, if we had a media that really told the story, they would tell the story in that manner so that when there are, let's say, certain type of preferential treatments in a city is made for the underclass, which generally affects, very few poor whites, but a large bunch of blacks and Latinos, they would not look at it like, it's some sort of a giveaway. They would look at it like, well, we need to do that for Appalachia as well, because they are going through the same conditions that these folks are.
Absolutely. I believe we have what I term it social or societal traumatic stress syndrome. Societal
I like that.
traumatic stress syndrome, not post-traumatic because we're not posted.
We're
It's
still
not
living
over.
it.
We're still in it.
Yes.
And we have not dealt with the consequences that happen when you dehumanize another person, right? Because if I look at another human being and I start classifying or labeling them based on what I see on the outside in their packaging, right? I go, they're black, they're female, they're, X, Y, and Z. Those labels in our minds cause us to interpret the other person as other, right?
Right.
Like they're different than me.
Right.
They're in the other tribe. And so I just give just a little bit less about them, right? Because they're not in my tribe. And that mentality has led to a lot of separation thinking when we need to be thinking in terms of interconnected. They're all spiritual beings having a human experience, and 99% the same biologically, genetically,
Right.
build, all of that. There's like literally 0.1%
You know what
our
is
genetic makeup that makes us different.
you know what is so interesting about that? Because I use this in my narrative as well. In as much we are maybe 99% the same. The thing that somebody purportedly of a different race could be genetically sufficiently equal to another one that they can transfer their kidneys, and a blood sister couldn't, should have already extinguished all those types of separations, if you will. I was in Nevada a few months ago campaigning for a particular person, and there was this doctor there was explaining why it is we needed to have Medicare for all. And she said, and this was a black doctor, and she said, as a black woman, I am stressed out more than anyone else. I have to worry about about my sons being killed, my husband being killed by cops is what she meant. I have to stress out about not being able to wear my hair the way I want to wear my hair on the job. And she gave a litany of things that puts a target on her, if you will. Okay? And after she was done with that, she said, and one of the reasons I want Medicare for all is if it's already for everybody, I can't be excluded for all these things you're asking me to go through. And when she made, I put it in a video yesterday as well. When she went through that analogy, I was like, perfectly said.
Yeah, that definitely is a reality that we have not accepted yet. But I also think that's because we stink at empathy, and
exactly.
Like
exactly.
Empathy, lack of empathy, I believe, it causes mental illness, because it does not allow you to see the experience and the perspective of the other creator that you are interacting with. So if you are unable or unwilling to empathize with another person, you are going to be operating in this little bitty bubble with your version of reality, and you're literally unable to appreciate the experience of another human being, and that's a very primitive state of operating.
Dr. Alauna, you are a psychiatrist. I got to ask you this. You're the one who should be answering this question, because I talk about empathy all the time, about people not having empathy, why or whatever. But I'm not really qualified to get into the brain portion. Why is it that we find some of the least empathetic people are those who need empathy the most for their own conditions?
I believe that the reason for that is that, well, I think I sort of touched on it. When a person is lacking empathy, they're operating in a very primitive state. For me, that means that the parts of their brain that I talk about, like their amygdala, the part that creates your emotions and all those huge, powerful urges and moves you from here, there, left, and right. That means that it's running the show for them. It's dictating how they interpret the world. It's a really horrible. I mean, I think about some of the way that our politicians think and operate, and you're like, man, you must be miserable. Or when I use empathy to think about what the experience of being, President Trump would be, that's hell. That's an awful experience to be in his mind and in his reality. If just looking at how he functions.
That is interesting that you said that, right? Because a lot of people get on my case. I do this show, and people would call in, and sometimes every so often I'll get the good old N-word called out, and the first thing I would look at them and it's like, you must be having a bad day.
Like, oh, baby.
Yeah, I would tell them like, oh, you having a bad, I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do for you or whatever? And some people, and you probably should know a whole lot of those as well, would get pissy mad at me for not reacting. And I'm like, I know who I am.
Yeah.
I am genuinely sorry for those folks who have to go there. And I mean empathetically sorry, because it's like that you have to go and, I don't even know what the hell that is like, right?
Yeah. It's a lot. There's a lot of hatred and fear and a lot of pain in people who function that way. And you can see it and hear it when they open their mouths to talk. So, I think that for me, I experience, that's the reason why I teach empathy skills, and that I believe that empathy skills will heal the trauma that the human species is experiencing. And I teach it with the LOVE acronym, LOVE. Listen and look with suspended judgment, meaning take your little bubble and, just for a second, we know you think you know, but, pause on that. O, observe the emotions in yourself and the other person or all parties involved. V, validate the differing and equal perspectives of each person. And E, express yourself skillfully, meaning using skills to recognize, like when you're feeling intensely emotional, that's your amygdala driving the bus, point blank period. What comes out of your mouth and what you say, the automatic default mode is my primitive brain is talking for me. These are not my best words. This is not my best brain that's dictating I'm handling this situation. And so you always will have better, but you have to recognize, like when those people are getting mad at you, that's their emotions and their amygdala that, you should do this, you should do that. All that judgment, all of that reaction, it serves a purpose to drive people and fuel their behavior, but it also creates a lot of internal roller coasters, a lot of pain, a lot of negative outcomes that we actually don't want. So learning how to have awareness of your emotions and control of yourself and your animal is pivotal for us, but we don't have an education system that gives any of that information. Where do you get a dedicated education about that?
We're in an economic system that doesn't have time or reason or motive to do that. But Dr. Alauna, we actually went beyond our time, but it was just fun talking. So here's what I'd like to ask you to do. Okay. Give a positive affirmation to all those folks that are locked up in their homes right now, but most importantly, give a word to those heroes that are out there in the grocery stores, our garbage people, our doctors, our nurses that are out there fighting the line as we complain about being locked up and cooped up at home, running from that invisible virus.
Well, I would just say that whatever you're doing, it's good enough. And I know that you may be looking at it like, this is not good enough, I should be doing more, or I should be doing something differently. But all of those shoulds, when you're shoulding yourself, you are creating more pain, you're creating more trauma because you're measuring yourself against a reality that's not happening. So it's literally just adding pressure and adding pain to the experience. So I would just learn to say to myself, it's good enough, because that will, if right now what you've been doing is laying on your couch and crying and eating a bunch of ho-hos, like that, I mean, you're having a real trauma. There is something that is truly leading to grief and powerful, painful emotions, and just acknowledging that, validating it, and saying it will pass. But you have to now learn to pull yourself out of that and learn to day by day just put some sort of organization together. This is a long haul thing. This thing is not just going away. We have to learn how to adjust and adapt. And so anything that humans decide they want to do, if they're physically capable of doing it, and then we put our minds to it over and over again in practice, we figure it out. So we will make it through this. We will figure it out, and we will have a better society for it. But we have to put ourselves in gear and learn how to control ourselves and educate ourselves about all of these invisible things that we have not given attention to before.
Folks, visit Dr. Alauna's site at dralauna.com, where she has her website and, of course, her Facebook page. I believe her Facebook page is the same. It's DARALAUNA. So it's facebook.com/dralauna. And I said the Alauna this time. That's the reason I said it this time. And please visit her website at dralauna.com. Dr. Alauna, trauma psychiatrist, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right and for giving those soothing words to our listeners.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel, and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.